Good morning, everyone. At this time, I'll call the County Board of Commissioner for Crow Wing County emergency meeting to order for November 12th, 2020. At this time, if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a quick note, I didn't ask for a moment of silence, so half of us did it and half didn't. So thank you for the ones that did, and thank you for the ones that didn't. Therese, would you call the roll call, please?
Commissioner Coring?
Here.
Commissioner Brecken?
Here.
Commissioner Barrows?
Here.
Commissioner Hoag?
Here.
Commissioner Franzine?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. I'd look for a motion to review and approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Commissioner Franzine makes the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Commissioner Brecken seconds the motion. Therese, if you would call the roll call, please.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag?
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows?
Chair votes aye. Motion is approved. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the restricting of the public access to our county buildings with respect to the increased episodes that we're seeing in Crow Wing County. So with that, I will ask Administrator Houle to give us a little background.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, we are seeing rapidly changing case numbers in Crow Wing County. To give you some idea of how rapidly they are changing, our case count over the past week is up. Now, you remember I talked to you about the last 8 days on Tuesday. Now I'm going to go to the number of 7 days, and you're going to get pretty much the same case count. It's about 560 increase in our case count in 1 week. Put that into some perspective, that's 27.8% of all the COVID cases in Crow Wing County since the inception of the pandemic have occurred in the last week. Just let that sink in for a sec. We're seeing the impacts of that in the community too, aren't we? Pequot Lake School District is going to go to 100% distance learning on the 16th of November. Brainerd is going to go 100% distance learning on the 18th of November. Pequot's the 16th, Brainerd's the 18th. CRMC is going to restrict public access for visitors starting on the 16th. What we're seeing is that folks are pulling back at the degree to which they are allowing folks to enter. And I think that's the foundation for your conversation today. What I would suggest is if you do want to restrict public entry to the building, I would ask for authorization to exempt that. We may have a meeting, we may have appointments that we want to let people in. So it's not really saying you can't come in, it would be saying by appointment. I think that's a better alternative than just to say, no, you can't come in. The other thing you may wish to consider is what do you wish to do with your county board meetings? There too, you can have crowds that could assemble. And in addition to that, I think we've noted there have been a number of attendees who don't want to comply with your requirements for a mask ordinance. I think that puts everybody else at risk in the room. And so you may wish to consider that as well.
Just for clarification, Tim, say that again. We would want to do, as we've seen at our board meetings, we've seen some individuals come without a face mask. Just reiterate what you just said for me.
What I'm suggesting is that maybe part of the basis, given the rise in case counts right now, that is particularly dangerous. And so you may wish to restrict public access to the board meetings.
Okay.
We've done that before. You may recall what that means is we go virtual with your board meetings. You still, I mean, it's up to you. You see that you can attend virtually, you can attend in person, but we would not allow the public to attend in person. They could only appear virtually.
And is there a time limit that would be in place if we did it? Do we have to renew that periodically as
I think
the governor
you should.
has to?
I think you should review it periodically. At this point in time, I just don't have a good enough crystal ball. And so I don't know when or if that rate of case growth will slow. If it slowed, I think you should reconsider. If it doesn't slow, I think it's the prudent thing to do.
So we could make a motion, if the appetite is there by the board, to put it in place, subject to reconsideration at a later date, rather than an end date. And I know, I just saw on the Brainerd paper that the city of Baxter just closed their city hall due to a COVID case within their group. So, I mean, we're seeing this impact to our government units, but also to our local businesses and that, and the people that wish to not comply are only exacerbating the situation. So my personal opinion is that I think we need to seriously consider a motion to close and by appointment only be allowed into our buildings.
Yeah. Mr. Chair?
We'll listen to the rest of the board.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, community services and land services are open again, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. How does staff feel about this?
I have received feedback since you contemplated that on Tuesday, that there would be, I'm sure it would vary from staff person to staff person, but there are certainly those staff people that are out there right now that are concerned about the case growth, and I think would be relieved.
Okay. And really, we've noticed like to have, when somebody's found positive, having to shut those down temporarily anyway.
I think that's the challenge for the school district. I think it's the challenge for us. It's the challenge for our hospital systems. It may not be beds as much as it is staff. And we've run into that, where you have an exposure or you need to do isolation or quarantine, and it affects a work group. And so we have seen impacts, and the schools are going through the same thing, and so are the hospitals and any other larger institutional place where people are in close proximity.
Another note that I heard this morning coming in was that North Dakota, in all of their bed capacity, is full now. They have no place to send anybody. And, we're creeping up on that in Minnesota. And we could see that. I know in Crow Wing County, we aren't short, but we aren't long either on available beds. So I would just throw that out there as another serious consideration here. Any other discussion? Commissioner Coring?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Question to Kim Poole. What about all the thousands and actually tens of thousands of dollars that we've spent on, well, for example, land services to put up the glass shields there to separate the staff from people that want to come in and do business with Crow Wing County. We've spent, I think, tens of thousands of dollars on that stuff. Isn't that sufficient to protect the staff? And then I guess the question is I don't know. I still go back to what I've said before. This government that we have here, Crow Wing County government, people are paying for this, and we're restricting access for them to come in to their government that they're paying for to come in and either get a marriage license, a death certificate, a permit to build. But yet you go over to Walmart or you go over to Costco or you go over to Menards there's just a ton of people over there. And I guess when I see Walmart and all these other big box stores start closing down, then I think I'd take a serious look at saying, I think we need to close down. But I think we've ramped up on our precautions at Crow Wing County, and so I guess I don't see the reason to shut everything down again. It doesn't make any sense. And then one thing about schools, and I'm not on the school board, but here's an article that was in the Pioneer Press. It said, and here's the headline. It says, "Students' grades take COVID hit. St. Paul high schoolers in remote learning failing at 39% of classes." So the remote learning for students or children, works for some it doesn't. They need the one-on-one, or they need the teacher right there. But I don't favor making any changes right now. I think the reason why we're seeing more cases is we're doing more testing. And so obviously when you're doing more testing, you're going to, obviously the case count is going to go higher. My neighbor just fell off his combine, broke his ankle, went into the hospital. They said, "Oh, we got to do a COVID test." Did a COVID test. He tested positive, and they said, "Oh, no, we can't do the surgery now." They sent him home. I just talked to him this morning. I said, "How do you feel?" He says, "I don't feel any symptoms or anything at all." So I don't know. I could be wrong, could be right. I don't know, but I just don't want to restrict people from coming to the government that they're paying for. That's where I'm coming from. I could be wrong, but that's the way I feel right now. Thanks.
And I understand, Commissioner Coring, your concern about government services being provided. I think one of the big concerns that we have is that we have a public health responsibility and to be able to provide those services. So I think it's in the best interest of our county to look at this issue and say, how are we going to be able to provide those services that we're supposed to provide, that they're paying for, and not have to just shut our whole operation down because of a pandemic within our county government employees. So I think that your point is understood, that we need to provide those services. We might have to do it on a different platform for a period of time. I don't think that's wrong. We did that earlier this year and it worked. It's not the best, I understand that, but it does work. And we can get through this, but we need to pay close attention to these rising numbers, and I think that's the important thing. Your Walmarts, your Targets, all those places, I'm not sure they have a public health concern, they have a bottom line concern. And to me, that doesn't address the issue that's in our communities. So I'll be quiet now. Thank you. Commissioner Hoag?
I'll only add, not to expand on Paul's comments, but I was talking with a school board member last night, as a matter of fact. It isn't that the students are being affected by this, it's the teachers, the bus drivers, the custodians, and everybody else that have contracted this, and the reason some of these schools are going distant learning is because they don't have staff to operate. So there's reasons behind some of their decisions. In that case, I believe it's more because they just don't have the teachers and the staff to teach the kids. But I just go back to a couple months ago when we restricted it. We felt as a public safety, this was the best for the community. We didn't have nearly the numbers that we have today. We don't have nearly the numbers of growth that we're seeing today. So I just think in interest of public health and safety, it is time to consider this until we see, and we're going to need this same equipment that we've purchased for months to come. But once we see a decline of numbers, hopefully sooner than later, that isn't going to get torn down just like that. I think that's going to be up there for months to come, if not years, until maybe sometime next year when there is a vaccine that we feel comfortable that this thing's behind us. But so I'm in favor of doing this with with no date of reopening. We just have not denied people access to get the information they need or get the projects that they're working on. All of that is still available, just in a different manner, and I think it's the right thing to do at this point.
Anything else?
Well, I've got the letter from the School District 181 in front of me, and it says that they've exhausted their substitute teachers, no longer have anybody available for coverage in any of the learning service units. They're running out of people to keep the schools open. And it also says that the transportation department has been short drivers and routes since the beginning of school. And so they don't even have enough bus drivers and buses. Some of the people are having to drive their own kids into school because some of the routes have been closed down. So I understand what's going on with the schools and why. And I've got a letter from Pequot too, if you'd like me to read from that, but it pretty much says the same thing. But, you know, this is growing. We had 115 new cases, I think, on Monday. That, the numbers are just astronomical. I know one day we had 125. That was either last Friday or the Friday before. So the numbers are growing to the point where we can't ignore this anymore.
Commissioner Brecken, anything to add?
No, I have nothing to add at this time.
Mr. Chair, if the board is so inclined, I would suggest that there are 3 things you could consider. One of them would be to restrict public access to by appointment only. And I do want to emphasize this. I don't use the word closed. We're not closed.
No.
We're switching to virtual service delivery. We're switching to service delivery by appointment only. We are still open and have been throughout the entire pandemic. So restrict public access to by appointment only, if you wish. If you're going to do that, I would ask that you allow me to grant an exception. Third, you could consider switching your board meetings to virtual. If you're going to do that, I don't know that I think it needs to be immediate, but it does need to be quick. It's already Thursday. I would suggest Monday as an effective date, but that's up to you as well.
So would that include all of our other meetings also, like budget and personnel and, you know, because people can come to those also, so we're
That is
not
correct.
talking just board
All
meetings.
board meetings.
So,
So all board and committee meetings? Yes, that's the way I would take that.
so this motion, given those various things, is going to be interesting to hear how you put that together, folks. So, Commissioner
Yep.
Franzine.
With the board meetings, the virtual board meetings, doesn't one member have to be here according to Robert's rules?
Either you, it's actually by statute, either one of you or me or Don. It has to be one of the elected board members, the chief administrative officer, or the chief legal counsel. So, yes.
Okay.
And as long as I don't have COVID, I'm willing to be here on site. So we would always have somebody here.
Okay.
No, and we can still attend.
Yes,
That may,
we're only restricting the public
all right,
from being in attendance.
okay.
So I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, can I ask another
Yes.
question?
Go ahead, Commissioner Coring.
So if somebody, you know, not everybody has the capability of, you know, older folks are maybe not computer literate and they don't have the capability to do online applications or something. So I'm kind of directing this to Mr. Houle. So let's say somebody doesn't have access to a computer and they want to get a permit. I don't know what it would be, but are you saying, when you say by appointment only, they can call, they can meet somewhere and we'll help them get what they need from Crow Wing County? Is that what you're saying?
That is, yes.
Okay. And, you know, one other question. So I know nobody said anything about all the glass that we put up and everything. So what it is you're just, it's because there's been some cases within the staff there that we're wanting it to be more people working from home. Is that what you're saying too, or what are you?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, I think the barriers that we have erected do and have done a good job of preventing COVID between our employees and our customers. I'm aware of no case that went across those barriers. On either side of the barrier, however, there is nothing that necessarily would preclude someone with a positive case from spreading it in the lobby to other members of the general public. So I'm concerned about that. On the other side of the glass, if an employee comes down with a case and we're not working as remotely as we can, then they have the potential to expose other members of the work group. And we've experienced that, and it has resulted in us needing to restrict public access to our building because we didn't have enough staff. So yes, I am concerned about that staff contingency. In my mind, in order of priority, I'd love it to be business as usual. That's my preference. I would really rather that we were there. Second, it is to keep county government functioning. That's what we're talking about now, that we would keep all of our functions, but we would deliver them differently. Third, if things get worse, then we may need to, if we run into problems mustering a workforce, have to decide what are the most important things we're going to do and what things are we not going to do. I don't want us to get there, and I don't know if there is anything we can do to stop it. I think the community can stop it. I don't think we can stop it.
Mr. Chair, I mean, talking with, medical people, it's, the feeling is that we're not going to peak here either until December through February will maybe kind of be our peaks. And, we got to make a tough decision here. I know I struggle with it.
Unfortunately, Administrator Houle, I can't make the motion, but I would sure love to make the motion, and I would have no trouble putting one together. But, so I call on my fellow board members to make a motion.
I'll attempt, and we can always work off of this, but I'll make the motion that we close the Crow Wing County campuses, or not close, we switch to virtual attendance with the exception of appointments for individuals, really until such time that we see a decrease in the case counts. I don't know if that's enough to cover.
So can I help?
Yeah.
Please.
I would suggest the motion could read, to restrict public access to county buildings to by appointment only, to grant the county administrator the ability to grant an exception so that we could have a meeting if we need to. We have canvassing board. We got to do that. And so that's an exception. And third, to switch the county board, all of the county board meetings to virtual, effective 11/16 of '20.
That covers in commissions, right?
Pardon?
That included committees besides
Yes,
the board? Okay.
all board meetings.
Okay.
But we can attend in person if we should choose.
That is correct.
Okay.
So Commissioner Hoag, would that be your
That's
motion?
fine. Yep, that's was the
Mr.
intent.
Chair, can I just have clarification for staff in the room on board meetings?
Sure.
What's for senior managers or who's ever presenting? Can they come in the room or do they have to come virtually?
Mr. Chair, members, what I have told them already is, if you can appear virtually, you should be. And so you'll notice, there's not very many people sitting behind me today. They're up there. And that's where they should be right now. And so unless you direct me otherwise, I'm going to keep telling them that.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we have a motion. I need a second.
Go for it.
I'll second.
Commissioner Brecken seconds the motion. Therese, if you would call the roll call, please.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag?
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows?
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Mr. Chair, that's all we have on the agenda for today.
Thank you, everyone. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Commissioner Franzine makes a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Commissioner Brecken seconds. Therese, if you would call the roll call, please.
Commissioner Hoag?
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrows?
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.